The following episode of the Toddcast was previously recorded on June 24th. What's it like to be an attorney? How difficult is law school? And how hard is it to be an attorney during COVID? Well, we talk about all that and more on this episode of the Toddcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Toddcast. As always, I'm your host, Todd McManus, and today is a very special episode because joining me is the man himself, the one and only Mr. Christian Creed. Mr. Creed, how are you doing today?
Hey, Todd, I'm doing great. Great to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. So, like I've said 2 weeks ago, I started this literally 2 weeks ago with the last guest. I've been trying something new called the icebreaker question. Okay. So I'm going to ask you this would you rather question right now. Would you rather, first off, do you like watermelon?
Yes.
Okay. So would you rather never eat watermelon ever again, just gone out of your life, you can't eat it, or you have to eat watermelon with every meal for the rest of your life?
I'm not a huge melon fan. I do like watermelon, however, but I think I would probably do without it.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd be up to eating watermelon with every meal.
Just thought
forever.
Of it, having get up in the morning, cook an omelet, and have some watermelons.
That doesn't sound too good.
So, which I picked the same thing. Yeah. I'm not gonna go without.
Yeah. Although I did buy some watermelon at Brookshire's 2 days ago.
Oh. So you're already prepared then.
Yeah, tis the season. Right.
So, with all that being said, you've done a good bit throughout your life, I'd say. And if anybody out there wants to see your accomplishments, they can go to creedlaw.com and see your About page there. And we're going to go through some of them here today. So we're going to go back a little while.
Okay.
Let's go back to when you graduated high school.
All righty.
So when you graduated high school, right after and you were about to start college, what was your initial plan? And did you go through the plan that you wanted? But basically, what was your initial plan of what you wanted to do with the rest of your life?
Well at the time, I was just happy to graduate from high school.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Alexandria and graduated from Ash, Alexandria Senior High. And really, I didn't have plans to attend a particular college. You know, it was different back then. You know, nowadays kids, when they're juniors in high school, they've got it pretty well mapped out and they've applied to several colleges. I guess when I graduated in 1981, there was an expectation that, I would go to LSU. Yeah. It's, anybody at the time who wanted to go to LSU, if they were willing to pay the $300 in tuition, they could go.
The good days.
And I had an opportunity to live with my cousin, and provided I find a summer job. And so right before I graduated, I did land a job at a clothing store in Baton Rouge and moved to Baton Rouge. In fact, my mom, I think I gave her about a 24-hour notice. She didn't even know I was moving to Baton Rouge, let alone going to attend LSU for summer school.
Yeah.
But did do that, and moved to Baton Rouge and started LSU when I was 17, the summer before the fall semester.
That was probably different.
It's kind of a small country boy going to Baton Rouge. It was a big eye-opener for me. I was fortunate. The basketball coach at the time, Del Brown's daughter, worked at the clothing store, and she befriended me, and she was from Baton Rouge and knew a lot of people and took me under her wing, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so that was really helpful. And ended up working for that clothing store all 4 years at college. In fact, ended up living with the family. They kind of took me in as adopted me. And so anyway, so that's how I started in college, and immediately I got involved in student government, and as a freshman rep, and eventually by the time I was a senior, I was elected student body president, and also worked for Baton Rouge Senator Osterberger at the time, will show you how much politics has changed, is an aide. He was the only Republican state senator in Baton Rouge.
That's something.
And now, of course, they hold Republicans hold the majority in the House and the Senate. But just to think about it, just he was the only. Everybody at the time were Democrats. But so I was always kind of interested in politics, and also later that summer I worked in Washington D.C. for our U.S. Senator Bennett Johnson, who was from Shreveport, and so I always had an aptitude and interest in politics. In fact, I thought I might one day become a politician, but once I got in business and realized that you can't really be a successful business person typically and be an elected official. They tend to be mutually exclusive. And my wife, Catherine, didn't really want me to be involved in politics. She had a lot to say about that. But over the years, it's always been fun. I still enjoy politics and helping my friends who are interested in running for elected office. Help them with their campaigns. That's kind of how I satisfy that aptitude.
Able to like sponsor them and all that kind of stuff too.
That's right.
So.
Just help them with their campaign. But so I don't know. When I started college, back to your initial question, I didn't know really what I wanted to do. Once I got in college, I just wanted to graduate. I didn't know I was going to become a lawyer. I did become interested in law when I was a senior in college. I started working as a accident investigator for an investigative group, and eventually did some insurance adjusting. But before I went to law school, I worked full time as an accident investigator for about 7 years, and that's when I decided I wanted to become a lawyer because I was working with lawyers, and I was doing a lot of the same things they did with regard to client interaction and case development. So finally I decided to go to law school. And so that was 7 years after graduating from LSU, and I went to Loyola in New Orleans. And that's where I met Catherine, my wife. We were classmates, and she graduated from LSU also. But she went straight from college to law school, whereas I set out, and so I'm 7 years older than she is. But and she had a boyfriend, I had a girlfriend, but just things evolve.
You'll never even met each other at LSU though.
No,
so that was kind of weird.
Yeah, well, she's now it's the age difference isn't that big of a deal, but when you're in high school or college, 7 years is a big difference. So no, I didn't know her until we met the first day of law school, and that would have been I'm trying to think 1991, I believe. And she's from Monroe, and that's why we ended up here. And she actually was third generation. Her family had her aunt and uncles were attorneys. Her grandfather was an attorney, and so she it was kind of a big deal for her to come back and be an attorney in the Monroe area. Third generation, and our daughter, actually, whose birthday it is today, I have to give her a little shout out. She just graduated from Loyola Law School and studying for the bar, so she'll actually be fourth generation in Catherine's family of attorneys. Of course, I know there's too many attorneys, but anyway, that's kind of how I became an attorney and ended up in Monroe.
And that's something how she was kind of meant to do it then when you say like third generation.
Well, I think there was an expectation from the get-go she'd go to, get her undergraduate degree and then go to law school. Whereas, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do when I was attending college, but as I started working as an investigator and interacting with attorneys and their clients, and at the time, I worked exclusively for plaintiff attorneys, injury attorneys, and that's what I do today. And so I definitely have a love for that area of the law and affinity for it, representing the people who are injured or, have problems and try to help them. I feel like we're the ones that wear the white caps, we're battling the insurance companies who don't want to pay the appropriate amount on claims. But of course, I'm biased. But interestingly, when I was in law school, I did work for law firms who were on the other side, who defended cases, and including a lot. We primarily did products liability cases, and they were defending the automobile manufacturers like Ford and Chrysler and Honda, and so it kind of gave me experience. In addition to working for the plaintiff attorneys all those years, now I get to work, for the defense attorneys, trying to develop their cases. And at the end of the day, you want to win your case. You want to develop the case in such a way that's going to be in your client's best interest.
Yeah.
But I knew in law school, as soon as I graduated, I wanted to do what I'm doing now, and that's, be a plaintiff's attorney.
And you just kept along. That way you could keep along with that then. Once you found that niche there, you got it down.
That's right. In the practice of law, there's all kind of areas of practice.
Yeah.
But once I did decide that I wanted to become a lawyer, I knew exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, for instance, my daughter, I don't know if she knows exactly the type of law she wants to practice. And that's pretty commonplace with law students, because they don't really teach you practical aspects of the practice of law in law school. But as a law student, I was a little bit older, and I had worked in the legal community for 7 years. Yeah. So I kind of knew. And in some respects, law school made better sense to me maybe than someone without that experience. I could see practical applications, but without that prior experience, you may not know exactly, how it applies to an actual practice, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Which, like you said, you went to Loyola University. That's where you graduated in 1995. I've heard different stories about law school being just so hard.
Right.
Was it real difficult for you? Was it a breeze? Was it like
how
difficult?
I was concerned. Back in the day, for instance, LSU had a very high attrition rate. Yeah. LSU Law School. In fact, I think statistically, it was a fact that they would admit a certain number of freshmen, each year, but by their sophomore year, about 50% of those would be, flunked out. So I didn't like those odds, and so candidly, I was a little bit concerned about even going to LSU, because that was the way that they approached their enrollment, and now they have a different approach. I believe, it's my understanding, they don't do that anymore. They admit good students and they keep them, and that's kind of how Loyola and Tulane did back then. But nonetheless, I was still concerned. I didn't want to. The law schools discourage students from working the first year because you need to be focused on your studies. Well, I certainly took them to heart, and I didn't work my first year. Yeah. Even with the investigative work I was telling you about, that was mainly my second, third year, because I was concerned. You hear all these horror stories about people flunking out. Yeah. So and a little bit nerve-wracking. They, by design, the professors are going to engage you during class. So if you're comfortable talking in front of people, and it's less stressful. But like Catherine, my wife, she doesn't like to talk in public or in classroom settings. She'd break out in hives. But really, as long as you prepared for each class and were conversing about the cases that were going to be discussed, in retrospect, it wasn't that difficult. Yeah. But it was very stressful the first couple of semesters. And once you get through your first year, you're like, oh, I can do this, and I get it. And it's once that you remove that stress out of the equation, we really had a good time. For me, particularly having been out of college for 7 years and working, and having the opportunity to go back to school is almost like going to college a second time. So even Catherine would say, she goes, I had as much fun in law school as I did, at LSU in undergrad. Yeah. I mean, that's from her perspective. So we had a good time. Now, studying for the bar exam, that's another matter. That's extremely stressful. And
I was going to
intense.
ask you about that. Is that you got the bar later on, and
Yeah.
what was that like?
Well, it's kind of interesting that when Catherine and I graduated, we were engaged to be married in the fall.
Yeah.
And we graduated and immediately started studying for the bar, and she was having to plan a wedding at the same
Yeah.
time. And that lasted about a week with phone calls back and forth to her mom and like trying to make wedding plans. And so we went from, it was going to be a rather large wedding in Monroe to having just an intimate wedding with less than 40 people at a chapel in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And we planned that whole wedding in about 2 days.
Oh.
But at least that stress was off our plate.
Yeah.
You know? And because the bar is just all consuming. You know, you have to study, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, if not more, until the exam, which is, I think this year it's like the third week in July. But ironically, my daughter's engaged to be married. She's getting married in September, and she's going through the same thing, studying for the bar. But they're going to do a small wedding as well.
Yeah.
I think they're just taking a page out of our playbook.
Yeah. Just thought that was a good idea. It's like
Yeah.
instead of having a big old wedding while we're studying for the bar.
Yeah.
Which I've heard it being like the bar test to be compared to like the MCAT for medical students as well.
I would
Because it's
think-
just these really hard tests that you have to take,
Right. I think so. I mean, yeah, it's kind of a rite of passage. And
Yeah.
To make sure that, I guess you've learned what you needed to learn in law
Yeah.
school. I will tell you, though, when you take the bar, it at least for Catherine and me, a light bulb goes off, and it's like things kind of, all the various courses, they come together,
Yeah.
and it makes sense. I remember thinking that during these bar, they have preparatory courses, of course, which are really helpful and useful.
Yeah.
But just it's like that professor explained how all these cases interrelated, and it just finally made sense where it was kind of fragmented during the course of the 3 years of law school, but it kind of gels and comes together just at the right time.
Yeah.
So, but interestingly about the bar, we moved back here initially to practice we had jobs with Catherine's grandfather's firm.
Yeah.
And the year we took the bar, I think it was like the worst passage rate ever.
Yeah.
I don't know if we knew that at the time, but it's like only 52% of all the bar applicants in Louisiana, only for like 52% pass, meaning like 48% flunk.
Yeah.
And somehow or another, we got wind of the fact that they were grading the bar exams tough that year, or, a lot of people might not pass or condition. And while we were waiting for the results, she said, of course, we're back here working, working for her family's firm. And she goes, well, we're going to have some, and we're newlyweds.
Yeah.
She said, we're going to have some serious problems if you passed and I didn't. And she goes, if I have to study for that bar exam again, and I said, and I asked, well, what do you expect me to do? I mean, I have no control. It's in the can. It is what it is. And she was really serious. She goes, it's just going to be a problem. I was like, well, anyway, we kind of laughed about it. Fortunately, both of us passed.
Yeah.
So, but no, that was stressful waiting for that.
Yeah, we're both part of the 52%.
We were, thankfully. And that was 25, almost 26 years ago.
Yeah. And so with Creed and Creed, which, amazing name, by the way. Just last names. Get it, Creed and Creed. I always hear it on the radio.
That's all you need.
There's a billboard, because I'm from Rayville.
Okay.
And there's a billboard with you on it right there.
Okay.
Every time you leave Rayville, go into Monroe, it's right there. And I'm like, there he is.
Yeah.
And so this Creed and Creed was established in 1998.
Right.
And why did you and your wife decide to open Creed and Creed? That way you could have your own establishment to yourselves?
Well, at the time, we just right out of law school for a very brief period of time, we went to work for her grandfather.
Yeah.
Who shortly thereafter retired and gave the firm, his Bowles and Ryan at the time, to his son and daughter, Catherine's aunt and uncle. And but they primarily did transactional work. They did a lot of work for CenturyLink and defense work.
Yeah.
And again, and my wife was a real estate attorney. She did have the good fortune to, study under and get trained as a real estate lawyer under a gentleman who'd been working in that capacity. His name was Chuck Ryan for like 40 years.
Yeah.
So she kind of learned from the best, and she enjoyed doing that. But I wanted to be an injury attorney.
Yeah.
And they just didn't do that. So we made the big leap. We talked to her grandfather, got his blessings to open. Not that we needed it, but just out of respect. So we kind of wanted to do, or Christian wants to do personal injury work. And, we're going to give it a go.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they thought we'd succeed or not, but, they said, yeah, go ahead, that'd be fine. Then we started the business. At the time, interest rates, I can't remember, but they reduced substantially, like from 12% to 8%,
Yeah.
and then 8% to 6%. And when we started our business, we had a title company, and truly that's how we were able to get our business off the ground, is because Catherine was doing real estate closings, and of course there's a big boom right now with real estate closings. Everybody's refinancing because interest rates are so cheap. Well, that same phenomena was occurring when we started our practice, which was fortuitous because otherwise I don't think I could have made it successfully.
Yeah.
Because when personal injury practice, you don't, you're not paid until you settle the case. And when we were just starting out, had very little personal injury business, but we did. She was working as a real estate attorney, so we were doing loan closings.
Yeah.
And that enabled the business to have cash flow.
Yeah.
Well, when I get my first PI case, you don't get paid maybe for 6 months until the client's, treat's released and get the case settled. So unless you have a big line of credit or, the ability to make money elsewhere, it's kind of a tough business to get into. But fortunately, Catherine was very busy and really supported us initially with her book of business. And over, I don't know exactly when it was, but probably maybe about year 10 or 12, it went from 100% real estate, 0 personal injury. And after about 10 years, it just complete the other, in the other direction, where, when our kids became, when my daughter started attending high school, that's when she decided to close the title company, and then it was 100% personal injury.
Yeah.
From that point forward, so probably for the last 15 years, it's just been personal injury.
Yeah. Okay.
But that gives you a little history of Creed and Creed. And, and coincidentally, the room we're in right now was Catherine's grandfather's personal office.
Oh.
Those were his curtains, and his desk was right there where you were.
You had a big office then.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now you can see it's our conference room.
Yeah.
But so anyway, this building has sold many times since then, but we lease it from some local owners. But this is where we started. When we graduated, and this is where we are today.
Yeah. And with Creed and Creed, you have 3 locations in Monroe, Alexandria, and New Orleans. Why did you choose those 3 cities, and will there be any more?
Well, we have no plans to expand. Alexandria, of course, because I'm from Alexandria, we talked about, so I've always had a satellite office there because I know a lot of people there and still have family and friends in Alexandria. And then New Orleans, of course, is where we attended school and have a lot of professional relationships with attorneys there and do business, particularly the Admiralty work, which is not a lot of in Monroe, but the Admiralty is in offshore accidents, accidents that occur in the Gulf or on the Mississippi River. In those cases, I generally work with attorneys in New Orleans, so it's kind of convenient to have a location there.
Yeah.
But really, practically speaking, I mean, we live in Monroe. This is where, our principal office is, and we're local, accessible, and that's something we really promote.
Yeah.
Is, being from Northeast Louisiana, and that's our roots, and that's that's where we
Yeah.
are, and we plan to stay.
And I like how with the 3 locations you have, you're not too far, but you got like one in north, one in the middle, and one right at the bottom of
That's
Louisiana.
right.
So you're like stretched all the way through, basically.
Right.
That way you can get every.
Well, we handle cases all over the state.
Yeah.
But the majority of our business is here in Northeast Louisiana.
Yeah. And do you, like, if something comes up in New Orleans, do you have to, like, drive down there or go down there to handle it? Or are you able to, like, call on the phone? Or, like, how's that happen?
Just both. Of course,
Okay.
with all this new technology, it's easy to handle most of the business remotely.
Yeah.
If you have to, with Zoom or teleconferences, of course, email, whatnot. But I think Zoom has kind of spoiled all of us. We actually had the technology in place before COVID with our legal software, law firm software, but we didn't utilize it much.
Yeah.
But when COVID hit, actually, even before the governor's mandate, we made a decision for the safety of our clients and our staff to, close the office for in-person visits and handle everything remotely by, not Zoom, but with our smartphones. We could have documents signed over the phone.
Yeah.
So we were able to interface with our clients, really utilizing our telephone and our legal software.
Yeah.
So that same technology allows us to communicate with folks not only throughout Louisiana, but all over the country.
Yeah. And like you said with COVID, we can talk about COVID a little bit.
Yes, sir.
How have you and your family been during COVID?
Well, thank you for asking. We've all, done well. Catherine and I took it very seriously. Just like I explained, our office, embraced all the protocols necessary to keep everybody safe. We followed the mandates, and we also just wore our masks. We didn't interact in the public. We basically worked remotely, stayed at home. Unfortunately, a lot of folks we know in our community in Ouachita Parish became very sick, and we even know a few people who lost their lives or loved ones as a result of it. I had one client who passed away of COVID, and his mother, father, and uncle also died of COVID, and that was fairly early on, and so it certainly got our attention, and so we took it seriously throughout. And fortunately, nobody at our law firm got had a couple people come down with it, but nobody got terribly sick as a result of it.
Yeah. And how would you say the business did during COVID? Did it, like, not as many because, not many people were out?
Well, that's a good question. Because we didn't have the foot traffic we normally have at our Monroe location. Because, for one thing, people weren't driving automobiles for a while. It was like a ghost town.
It was.
And so, fortunately for our citizens, they weren't having automobile accidents with the same frequency. Business did slow. Of course, all the business in our pipeline for the past 2 years, that those cases needed to be worked and developed. So even though new business slowed, we still were plenty busy, handling the cases that we already, had, and representing our clients that we already had. But that was, I would say, only for a couple of months, and then, when people started getting acclimated to what they needed to do and how they needed to act because of COVID, the business resumed.
Yeah.
But I would say there was a lull for 2 to 3 months, but then it's it was back to usual thereafter.
Yeah. Because I think we're pretty close back to normal now.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Thankfully.
Yeah, because like I'm vaccinated, and like a lot of people just go ahead and getting it. That way we can go ahead and go
well,
back to somewhat normal,
That's right.
So,
well, I tell you, until then, we wore our mask and social distance, and we had Purell at every desk, and we did away with our, sharing pens, for instance, and we tried to, would have Lysol and would constantly wipe down everything. But now I think because most people are vaccinated, I think just about everybody in this office is vaccinated. Kathy and I are vaccinated. We feel confident that hopefully we put this behind us.
Yeah.
I always careful to come in. I'm almost out of the habit now, but if I'm not wearing my mask, or I don't wear it any longer, but I tell people I've been double vaccinated. But would you like me to put a mask on? And, and people appreciate that. But typically, most everybody like you that I speak to seems to be vaccinated, seems to have received the vaccine. And some people still come in our office wearing masks, and they've been vaccinated, but they're just being extra precautious, which, I respect that too.
Yeah, that's more power to them,
Sure.
So, with everything that we've talked about, if you look back and you yourself, when you graduated high school, was able to see all the stuff up until now that you've done, would he believe it? Would he be like, "Oh, that's what I'm gonna do"? Like, what would you say when you were younger?
Well, I've always been self-confident. I've always had a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would have envisioned me being where I am today. But at the time, I grew up very poor. I was a fry cook at Popeye's Fried Chicken, and so again, I just wanted to get my degree. I would have been satisfied. I remember having an amount in mind. If I could just make X amount of dollars, I think it was $24,000 a year, I'd be set for life. If I could do that, I'd be a success. I love where I am in life now. Being an attorney, doing what I love to do. Having a great wife and business partner. Happens to be my law partner, and blessed with a healthy family. That young man would be very happy. But maybe a little surprised too. But who knows? I don't know. I thought I might be run for governor or something back then. So I had high aspirations.
Yeah. Governor Creed.
Yeah.
So, which I just thought of this, is that with different attorneys and lawyers and all this and these firms, are there any kind of like competition between different firms like that? Like, is there any kind of competition like here in the Monroe area or anything like that?
Yeah, well, in any business, you're going to have competition.
Yeah.
We have our local bar is very congenial. We all know one another. We all get along. It doesn't matter if you're a plaintiff's attorney, a defense attorney. We work with the same people, day in, day out. Same with insurance adjusters, too, that we work with in this area. So I would say, with regard to the local attorneys, it's friendly competition, but we all get along fine and encourage each other with their respective practices. Of course, then you got a couple of other law firms who really aren't based here that called the advertising lawyers. Although I do advertise too, so I don't want to be hypocritical, but we try to do it differently. They like to, come in and I guess pick up some of the local market share, but they do this throughout, in all the communities throughout the state, and in some even in multiple states. But I think we're real fortunate to have a congenial professional bar.
Yeah, because I know like you always hear like Creed and Creed, Jeff Guerrero is one of them, and then I think they opened one recently was another Gordon McKernan
Right.
office.
That's right.
And he has 1 million billboards across the state.
Yeah.
And
I think he's Lamar's biggest customer,
Yeah.
literally. Yeah,
And so
he's
it's-
based out of Baton Rouge.
Yeah, and it's like you got to have some level of competition, And if you ever which I've thought of this before, whenever you're watching the news or something happen, have you ever been like, I want to have this case? Like, have you ever been in that moment of saying,
Well,
man, I wish I could work this case,
Possibly. I mean, it I don't know. It may be a little tacky,
Yeah.
because you don't wish anybody harm or injury. But sometimes when you hear of certain circumstances, you obviously think, well, perhaps I could be a benefit to the family or help them with this particular case. Yeah. But I mean, certainly don't wish for anybody to have an accident.
Yeah.
But I was actually at a conference one time, and there was a Shreveport attorney. He was kind of holding court with some folks who were non-attorneys, and he made the comment. He goes, "Well, yeah, I love it when it rains because it just causes so many accidents." And I remember at the time, my daughter was like in driver's ed, like 15. Nervous wreck as a young parent because my daughter's about to,
learn how to
take
drive.
to the streets.
Yeah.
And you got this guy who I would describe as kind of a jerk, saying, it's that attitude that gives attorneys bad name or bad reputation.
Because the
ambulance chaser.
Because they hope people get hurt, that way they can make money.
I mean, that was his implication, but I was like, I mean, what? Yeah, how horrible is that?
Yeah.
But I don't know how I got off on that subject, but I remember that was really offensive and offended me back in the day. But I guess as a response to your question, he might say yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's always been cases, of course, that are interesting to you. That's like, man, I wish I could have worked on that or something other like that. Sure. It's like, because that's like your field of work. So you're like, oh, that's interesting. That would have been interesting for me to work on. Right. My take on it.
Sure. Well, I mean, you have some folks that are attorneys who are really good at research or legal writing. My preference is not to be behind the desk, but out in the field. I like talking to witnesses and police officers and inspecting the accident scenes and trying to reconstruct what happened. And that's the fun part. Of course, that's kind of consistent with what I did before I went to law school. As opposed to being in the law library, reading case law. But that's part of it. There's so many different aspects to case development.
Yeah. But. And it's kind of good that you said that you wanted to be somewhat of a politician, because that makes you more of like a people person. And you really got to be able to talk to people to do this line of work, in my opinion.
I would think so. I mean, it would certainly helps.
Yeah.
If you have just a characteristic or personality trait, but obviously, I think it would certainly help if you're a people person. If you can connect with folks from all stages of life. I mean, I think I can, and I think that's benefited me in my practice.
Yeah. And so, to end this episode off, is there any advice that you would want to give someone who may be going to law school or considering going into the law field? Is there anything you'd like to say to them?
No, I mean, just study hard and be dedicated, and don't be overly stressed like perhaps I was as a freshman. But if you can get work experience in the legal field prior to or during law school, that's really beneficial. So those if you decide to take a year or two off after graduating, undergrad, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it helped me, because when I came back, I had some work experience. I was more mature. I realized that work's not necessarily cut out, or it's not what it's cut out to be. I think I worked 7 years, and I don't think I saved a penny. I had debt. So, so when I had the opportunity to go back to school, I really relished the opportunity. Like I said, it was like going to college a second time. Yeah. And it didn't seem as difficult as working 8 to 5 job. Or so after you work and you bust your tail a little bit, and then you have the opportunity to go back, you appreciate it for what it is. So, studying in an air-conditioned library and going to class and being surrounded with, smart people, that's a pretty good trade-off to working in the hot summers of Louisiana. So anyway, I guess if you have an opportunity to take some time off and work first, particularly if you can do so in the legal field, that would benefit somebody greatly.
And if you didn't take off all those years, you wouldn't have met your wife. So
that's true. It worked out.
So it all came together.
That's right. In fact, I tried to get into law school the year before, and I applied at the last minute, and didn't make the cut. And I'm so glad I didn't, because I would think about that often. And I was really disappointed. But I truly waited at the last minute. But then in retrospect, so that's good advice too. Things generally work out for a reason, and it works out for the best. I'm optimistic, somewhat Pollyanna-ish. I think about that all the time.
Yeah. And so, to end this off, do you have anything you'd like to add or say to end this episode?
No, I'm flattered that you wanted to speak to me today, Todd. I hope I didn't bore you or your audience, but
I think you're the first attorney and lawyer to be on. So
again, I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to start listening to your podcast. I hear great things about them, and just let your listeners know if we could ever help them. We're here in Monroe on Tower Drive, and if you mentioned seeing a billboard, lastly I'll say people, when I meet them a lot of times for the first time, they say, we see you all over town. And my reply is, well, you better. So that's by design. But no, we're here, we're local, and Catherine and I are, engaged in the community, and probably know many of you, of your listeners personally, and wish you continued success with your show.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you once again for being here.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
As always, please rate and subscribe. And if you're listening on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. And click that bell to get notified when new videos are uploaded. And make sure you follow the Toddcast only on Instagram at @the_Toddcast_ for all your Toddcast social media needs. Make sure you tell your friends and your family, or anybody really, to give it a listen. And thank all of you for listening to this episode. And if you want to know what's going to happen next week, well, I guess you're just going to have to tune in to find out. Only on the Toddcast.